My name is Komovic, and welcome to this virtual conversation entitled Mindset, Money, and Habits. Today, I'll be joined by Brandon Kaiser and Brennan Williams, co founders of Infinite You, an entrepreneurship literacy program. Brandon and Brennan, thank you so much for joining me here today. Let's get started with a little bit about yourselves.
Yeah, I'll kick us off here. So I grew up in Seattle, Washington, small town, and I say that because it's part of my story in that I always, as a younger kid, wanted to go out and kind of see the world. Little did I know that I would eventually want to go out and see the world in the marketplace. And so I kind of picked up shop and decided to go to school in Phoenix, Arizona, actually where I met Brandon, which is super cool. And I studied sports management there. Part of the story is that I found out in a few months I didn't want to study that. Ended up picking up an entrepreneurship minor. Enjoyed school, loved school, outgoing, sunny. There were pools on campus. And looking back, I guess wish I would have taken that a little more seriously. But yeah, here I am today, out of school. I got a job overlooking a coffee shop, growing that on that campus that I went to school at. Loved that, high energy, lots of coffee. And so I loved growing that brand really from nothing to 4 locations. And so that was super fun. And then as I'm standing here today, I think we're going to tell you guys a little bit more about it, but excited to start up Infinite You, something that Brandon and I have wanted to do for forever. And so I don't want to say every day we're kind of living out our dream, but yeah, it is fun. It's a great time and we love what we do.
My name is Brandon Kaiser. I'm in San Diego, California. I was born here, grew up in Colorado, and then went to school in Phoenix. That's where Brennan and I met. We were freshman year roommates, became instant best friends, and I've maintained that friendship. We were at each other's weddings, and now we've got the privilege and joy of doing business together. And a little bit about me. In high school, I thought I wanted to be a nurse. I think my worldview was so small that I heard, you help people, you can do travel nursing. There's high demand for male nurses. So I went to school as a nursing major, similar to Brennan, 3 years in the program. And Brennan can attest to some of the breakdowns and just emotional, challenges that I was going through being in this state where I wasn't sure that I was pursuing what I wanted to be in. I'd already invested 3 years of my life and time and energy and money into becoming a nurse, yet internally I was so unfulfilled. I was so unhappy. Thankfully, I did make the switch. So I was like, how can I graduate on time? So I graduated with an exercise science degree. And similar with Brennan, had a great college experience, spent a lot of time building the student section, which Brennan actually was a part of. And just to clarify, that means we were going to basketball games, painting our chests, screaming, but also building that out and getting students to come to games. And we went from 100 students at games to 2,500 students. We got national attention. And why that's important is one, it impacted me years down the road with my first business. But two, it was actually my first exposure to this kind of entrepreneurial journey of having an idea and seeing that come to fruition and working hard and just being so passionate about something. So that was fun. And then graduated from college, wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I moved to San Diego. I love it here. I love the beach. I love playing volleyball. I love surfing. And I worked corporate sales for 2 years. Sales, never even really heard about sales until after college. Really wasn't exposed to it, but every business needs sales. And so did that for 2 years. Quit that, worked for a couple local companies to learn the entrepreneurship game. Took a massive pay cut, but the experience was super valuable. And then in 2018, launched my own venture, jumped into entrepreneurship, and that was actually a student section consulting company. So that's why it's important, is because then I got to partner with other schools. And because of the quote risk, or because I'd followed my passions in college of pursuing the student section, I had no idea how that was going to pay off years down the line with entrepreneurship and business. And so that's why I just wanted to touch on that. And yeah, so I still run that company. And then, yeah, last year, COVID, obviously we had to adapt. And so we launched Infinite You. And yeah, married. Brennan's married. And my wife and I have a kid on the way in July. So that's a bit about me.
Wonderful. So now that we know more about both of you, let's talk about Infinite You. Were both of you always made to be entrepreneurs? Where did this idea come from? And ultimately, how did you translate this idea into the successful project that it is now?
Well, first, before we get to that, Komal, I'll have to say that if you can find on Google shirtless pictures of me and Brandon at a basketball game, all painted up, looking like lunatics. So hopefully, no one does that because you'll see a very humbling side to us, unfortunately. But all that to say, when we were in school, and I couldn't remember maybe the exact day or time, but me and Brandon lived together every year, I believe, in school. And there was one day I came back from class and I just had the moment I like threw my backpack down, and it was just one of those moments where I'm like, what did I just do? Like that was an hour, I didn't learn anything. Teacher just clearly didn't want to be there, and I just didn't think any of that was really going to pay off for me. And so those conversations, I guess, began, and especially as Brandon was kind of questioning where he was at with his work and what he was going to be doing after school. And those just kind of slowly began. And eventually we got to a point, I believe, when we graduated where we said, eventually someday we're gonna act upon this frustration that we had, being just ill-equipped as young adults, not knowing what's truly out there, not being exposed to entrepreneurship, not being exposed to the real life things, managing money, habits, mindset, those sorts of things. We kind of figured out on our own as well, but we just kind of had that moment, and we just said, you know what, this is going to be cool. This is a big project that we want to do, and so let's go out. Like we're young and we're kind of figuring out the marketplace. We can go do whatever, and then we'll circle back around. And those were like serious conversations. We had them. We would always write stuff down, and we'd text each other. Sometimes there'd be a call every now and then, like, "Hey, I just had this happen. Like this is so cool. Like we've got to do this." So we have this thing. We didn't know the exact details of it, but this that came from this frustration of just the modern classroom, and it just didn't really. We both weren't necessarily great fits for it, if that makes any sense. And we maybe had seen that because we had such great success building a student section. Like we have some things that what it takes to be great, but we just don't feel like the classroom was preparing us in that manner. So, Brandon, I don't know if you want to pick up from there, if there's anything else you want to add, but that's really where I guess it started.
Yeah, I just looked up just some early notes of this idea, and it went back all the way to 2017. So pretty soon after we were done with school. I
Yeah.
think it just really stemmed from both personal experience and also observation. So having friends who are just thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt, and now they're limited, and now they're not able to pursue their dreams, or they just have this financial uphill battle the rest of their life. Um, but also experience again, because nursing major, and like I tell people I majored in student sections because I literally can say like I haven't really used anything I learned in the classroom as far as the actual knowledge and topics. Learning how to learn, setting goals, following through with tasks, of course that's valuable. And so yeah, once we got into the real world, I was talking to more and more people about who were affected by student loans, who weren't working in their fields. Most people in sales like don't go to college for sales. They're just like, "Oh my gosh, you just have to work hard, you're high energy and you get paid a lot of money. That's amazing." And they don't learn those things till afterwards. And so I know student loans have affected, Brennan. I had to, pay back my parents for school. And then my journey, getting into sales, jumping into entrepreneurship, that didn't take place from the classroom. No academic theory could have ever prepared my mindset or given me the courage or shown me the way to actually jump into that. And so like Brennan said, we said we got to do something at some point, maybe 15 years down the line. And then last year just felt like the right time with COVID.
Absolutely. So it seems like Infinite You was always an idea. It was always something that you knew you wanted to do, but I think the pandemic gave you the means of actually implementing it. And you finished school, and so just the circumstances were right. So my next question is actually related to that. Obviously, a lot of people have a passion project or a side hobby that gives them excitement, something that they want to implement that can impact more people. But a lot of the time, it seems like the circumstances or they just don't have the means of implementing the project at that time, or it's more like a I'll start tomorrow thing, but it's an ongoing cycle. So, what is your advice to these people who have an idea on standby, who have a project that they want to implement, that they genuinely want to go through with, but they just don't seem to find the means of carrying it out, whether it be time or resources?
Very passionate about this. There's a lot to unpack there, but I think the single word that I could summarize of kind of the cause of a lot of these effects and implications is fear. And and I'm not just saying that to be cliche, but if you if you look at a lot of people's decision making and their behavior, for a lot of people, you can always diagnose that down to some sort of fear. And um, why do people go to college? Well, a lot of people go to college to get a job because they're fearful that if they don't have a college degree, they're not going to be able to get a job or they're not going to be able to pay their bills. Why do a lot of people stay in a corporate job even if they don't like it? Because they're fearful that if they leave, they're not going to have that stability, or what if they fail? And so I think fear and failure are one of the biggest. Obviously, there's a very real pandemic going on, but I think maybe an internal and emotional pandemic is the fear and failure and the fear of failure. And so, one thing that personally I learned and Brennan learned, and something we teach, is if you can change your mindset to not live out of fear, but out of confidence, which I'll talk about where that can come from in a minute, but also and sometimes a little goes a long way. So we're not saying like you have to like overcome fear and drop out and do all this. Just start craving being uncomfortable, start looking at every quote failure as a learning opportunity. So now Brent and I never say that we failed, or I can confidently say that I will never fear failure again, because everything is feedback. So start viewing failure as feedback and use that to learn, and then you can adjust and adapt. And so the long-term effects that I see, huge mental health issue across the country. Why? Is because people live out of fear, and then they're stuck doing things they don't want to do, and they don't have clarity on their three pillars of self. And that is something that we think is the most important first step. Of a little goes a long way. Hey, if you're in high school, like, we're not saying you're not going to have your whole life figured out. When you're 22, you're probably going to have different goals than when you're 18. We're not saying don't go to college. We're not saying you have to go start the next Facebook. But what we are saying is just know that the habits and the things you start implementing now are going to afford you the ability to take calculated risks and avoid the rat race. If you just go through the motions, this is from observation. If you go through the motions and you just go to school and then you go to college because everybody else says you need to go to college, and you're scared that if you don't go to college, you're going to be a failure, and then you graduate and then you get a job and then you get in that corporate 9 to 5 rat race. Well, like, if you don't do anything different than society, then you're not going to get different results. And it's what we call the lemming effect. If you don't go against the grain, or ask why, or set yourself up, then it's really easy. It's not your fault. There's nothing wrong with those things. There's nothing wrong with going to college. There's nothing wrong with working corporate. I worked corporate for 2 years and I learned a ton. I had tremendous training. I made a lot of money, but long term, it wasn't fulfilling. But I was willing to do whatever it takes to learn what I felt like I needed. So going back to the three pillars of self, the first is mindset, and that comes down to self-awareness of who you are, what your goals are, and then realizing or recognizing what is your fear, and then what is building confidence. The second is money. So much of this comes back to financial literacy. Again, something that drives me crazy that's not mandatory in school. What's an asset versus liability, right? What's income versus investing versus debt? All these different things is not really taught. So the second pillar of self that really a little goes a long way is financial discipline and habits. Take the time to read some awesome financial books: Rich Dad Poor Dad, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, Richest Man in Babylon. Learn these financial principles and start implementing them now. If you're making $100 a month, $1,000 a month, you're going to have the same habits when you're making $1,000 or $10,000 a month. And then the third pillar of self, which is so important to realize, and how to, I guess, escape this rat race, is habits, daily habits. You talk about a little goes a long way. Everything compounds. So your health, what you put in your body, what you eat, if you exercise, how you spend your time, whether it's playing video games or reading. Again, we're not saying like cut out all fun and be super regimented, But 20 minutes reading versus playing an extra episode on a video game or watching a Netflix episode, that's going to compound where 5 years from now, you're going to have way more knowledge and insight. And so I guess just to summarize, I'm so passionate about this topic. So I'll just try and keep it short is just there's not the system is what it is, and we can't blame the system. We have to take individual responsibility and take ownership of what we want. And in order to feel confident enough to take a calculated risk to avoid the rat race or to pursue our dreams and to believe in them, we have to master those three pillars of self, which is mindset, money, and habits.
I completely resonate with the three pillars because that's spot on. It's the theme of our conversation today. And the best way to reach a goal that seems overwhelming and intimidating is simply to break it up into smaller sections that you can tackle. So if you have a passion project, if you have something that you've been wanting to do for a long time, but you've just never found the time to do it, think about putting in a small amount of time every single day, whether that be 5, 10, 20 minutes, and try to make a habit out of it. Try to keep it consistent. Thank you so much, Brandon, for that advice. So our next question is, out of all the students you work with, out of all the dedicated students who invest in their own future and want to learn more about entrepreneurship to carry out their own passions, what are some common traits you see?
I think a great place to start, which kind of connects this question and the last question. And I think if you're looking for a first tangible step on where to go, I think is the community. And so I think one thing that Brandon and I provide, obviously, is the coaching in the community. And I know, Como, that's what you provide at BizBuck too, which I think is so important. So, if you feel like you're just at this boiling point, if you're a student right now and you're like, I don't know where to go, first step, try to find someone in your community, if it's a teacher or someone within your community, even Brandon and I will hop on a chat with you, whatever. And that's always a great place to start. You need people around you to support you and get you through those things. But I would say, I think it's just willingness to take those first steps and overcome that fear. It doesn't happen right away, but it's kind of just like jumping off the ledge and going for it. And so a lot of our students say, okay, this is where I'm at right now, and this is where I want to be. And they just got to take that first step. And so many of our students, Brandon can attest to this, we'll talk with them. And this isn't even like 6 months to a year, because we haven't had really even that much time yet, but we've seen students who in 2 weeks literally go, wait, that was right there in front of me. And we're just like, yeah, and they're like, wait, I had it. Like, it was there. I had it the whole time. And so I would say that's one thing. It's just the willingness of the students to take the coaching, but as well as take the little disciplined action that, it's small. One of our students, Brandon, I think of, who wanted to kind of work in the guitar space, but he just said, like, I don't think I can be putting out content on playing the guitar and advice. And Brandon had a full coaching call for an hour, just talking through them, like, dude, just start putting out content. No. Like, that's my social media, and it's talking through, like, well, who's gonna care? Sure enough, now we've got, multiple clients booked and that's within a few weeks, and we're not getting there. And so it's really those first steps, willingness to take the first steps in the coaching. And it's uncomfortable, and it feels a little weird, for sure. But I think it's just that confidence and willingness to take that first step, I think, is always the right place to start.
Yeah, just one thing to add is intrinsic motivation. They're internally motivated, but they're committed to taking ownership themselves. So there's a balance between humility and saying, I don't have all the answers, but then confidence, saying, I trust myself with the right formula, with the right plan, that I can achieve those goals. And so they're just willing to do whatever it takes and take ownership. And then we could just serve as that catalyst to get them there. But really well put, Bren.
Absolutely. And let's talk about the difference between motivation and discipline as well. I think a lot of the time people think that they need to wake up fully motivated every single day, 24/7, 365. Even if it's a project that you really like, it's unnatural to be fully pumped up all the time. And I think that's where the majority of people who are trying to carry out a project or make an impact, where they fall behind, because they don't feel that natural motivation all the time. But I think the difference between motivation and discipline is that discipline is consistent. Motivation will push you throughout, but discipline is something that gets you to work on the project even on your off days. That's present in athletes and industry professionals, business professionals, really any industry, any occupation. Discipline is required and discipline is necessary in order to succeed. So that's definitely an important factor. But I mean, again, you can only be disciplined if you know what your goal is, if you're very, very clear what the outcome should be. So in our BizBook community, in the anonymous chat, someone said that they don't like what they're currently pursuing, but they're not sure what else to do or where the next step is. So I know you'll answer this question really well, Brandon and Brennan. So what would your advice be to the students?
I know Brandon's going to be super fired up. So I'll give my example. So I went to school, like I said, as a sports management major. I love sports. I obviously still love sports. But I was like, this is what I'm going to do because I love sports. That's then going to be like what I want to do. Right. And so I was just got to school so excited. I'm doing it. And then, we have our first meeting and a guy says, hey, sports management, if you're studying that, just know like hopefully you're ready every 2 or 3 years to move. Hopefully you're ready to tell your family that. Hopefully you're ready to work 50 to 60-hour weeks, not making a lot. Those are the realities. And I remember just having that moment like, oh, but I still love sports. And so I think all that to say is first be able to separate like passions and understand you can still have those passions in your life. And I know, Brandon's even a testament to that with nursing. And that probably comes from, his internal love to just like help and serve others. And I think that was kind of what he wanted to do. But anyways, all that to say, it's hard. And so I can say I wake up and love what I do. And then there's some days like, and this is, me and Brandon are real guys. We're not going to go out in front of our like cars and take a selfie and all that stuff, but we're just everyday guys. But like, I'll have moments and, Brandon's had them too, where he'll just be like, dude, this is tough. This sucks. Like, what are we doing? We're in the wilderness right now. But that's normal. I'm like, I don't want to say being okay with it, but having that community and then having those disciplines. So like during those days, it's like, okay, well, Brandon, let's read, something that we've typed out each for ourselves that builds our confidence. So that way in those times we have it. Sometimes we'll do a little phone call and we'll rally and we'll just stay in our disciplines that we have. And so instead of kind of going off the rails, if you're in something that is really tough or maybe you're not super passionate about, that's okay. And so, yeah. And then my last thing I would say is be willing to be flexible and change. What I thought I wanted to do at 18, like I said, I couldn't fathom like working in sports right now, if I'm being honest. And that I would have never believed that when I was that age. And so be okay with things changing. And there's going to be different variables in your life that are going to matter. In your personal life, financially, all those variables are going to be plugged in. And be okay with, everyone always is like, I want to have like my dream job. And sometimes you're like gonna want to go work sales and work 60 hours a week and make a ton of money. And then there's going to be a point in your life where you're like, that's maybe not what I want to do. And so, be okay with just things being different at different times and allowing yourself to kind of see and explore new things.
Yeah. And that's such a great question. I'm so glad somebody asked that. And seriously, like there's vulnerability in that too, of just saying like, I don't have it figured out. I feel like I'm lying to myself. And I'm a very emotional person. I wear my emotions on my sleeve. So that simultaneously breaks my heart, but excites me because someone is willing to share that they're not happy where they're at, or they feel like they're lying to themselves. A lot of people don't even get there. So, one, I wake up, I want to see every person live their full potential and feel like they're never lying to themselves. And so, what was the specific question? Because I just want to be very succinct here and very concise. So can you just repeat the question part and then I'll just get right to the point?
Sure. So the exact question was, I don't know what I want to pursue, but I don't like what I'm currently pursuing.
I'm going to go very practical because it really comes down to this. There is no 100% guarantee way of success. There is no proven path to success for each person's journey. There is, however, a proven path to being miserable or to not liking your life. And that is, if you are unhappy, staying where you're at and living out of fear and not making any adjustments. So now there's a practical component of how do you change, how do you transition, things like that. What Brennan said about being flexible. So we call it, long-term goals, short-term flexibility. Okay. So long-term growth and goals, short-term flexibility. So this is going to go back to that self-awareness. So what I would encourage the student and every other student is just very practical, really do the work on self-awareness of who you are right now and what you think you might want in the future. So that means do some personality tests. Go text this week 5 friends and say, hey, I'm looking to develop myself. What are the strengths that you see in me? And what are some blind spots? What are some, I don't want to call them weaknesses, what are some blind spots and areas of opportunity that you see in me that I can improve? You'll be amazed at how affirmed you'll feel when 5 friends go ask your family the same things. And that'll start to give you some ideas, because sometimes we have blind spots. We can't see ourselves in the mirror. Take some personality tests. Literally write out like, hey, what do I think I want of quality of life? Where do I think I want to live? Write it out. Do I want a family? Do I want kids? What do I want my relationships to look like? Sure, how much money do I want to make, but what type of lifestyle do I want to live? It's going to be different per person. Write those things out, become self-aware, and then you can start reverse engineering that process. You don't have to have, like, I don't know what I want to do. That's okay. Let's figure out where you want to go first, and then what you need to do to get there will start to open itself up, and you'll start to be willing to do that if you have those long-term goals and that short-term flexibility.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I believe that you won't put forth your best effort if you don't genuinely enjoy what you're doing. So, definitely the first most important step is to recognize that you don't enjoy what you're doing. So, kudos to you for getting there. But as Brandon said, things will start to unfold once you redirect your attention to what you do really like instead of wasting your time on something that you don't even view as meaningful. And Brandon, I also want to emphasize what you said about long term goals but short term flexibility. I think that's a beautiful way of putting it. As long as you have a long term clear outcome of what your goal looks like, but you have the short term flexibility where you're able to overcome the unexpected obstacles, then that's really a recipe for reaching your goal. And so, also, our next question is related to the previous one. Brandon and Brennan, I know there has been at least one point where you felt lost in your own career, or you realized that what you're pursuing is not necessarily what you wanted to do at that point. So, what are some resources that helped you through that, or that helped throughout the progression of your career?
Let me go real quick because I want to actually, again, tie this question with the one before. I would say it's honestly feedback. And so for that student that asked that question, I know that sounds kind of corny and cliche, but
Really good.
we, like I don't know, like I would say one of my biggest resources has been learning and the feedback and kind of just that natural process and not going back and be like, oh, I wish I would have changed that, but just learning. And so that's kind of how I am naturally. And kind of the decision I made to like go off to school and kind of do my own thing. And I just was like learning every day, and it was like, oh, that wasn't good. It's almost like when you see the kid put their hand on the burner and they're like, nope, I shouldn't do that anymore. That's kind of what I did for a while. And so I would say feedback was probably one of my greatest resources. And so there were, some interesting moments and some things where it's like, man, I could have applied myself better there or done better there. But I learned really quick and really well. And so I'd say that's probably my number one resource. I would say I also got a lot better in high school. Like I would never read a book. I just wouldn't. And so that was a mistake on my part. When I got to college, I started reading books. And that helped out a lot because, you just get this direct access to so many things. And you were just talking about, the social media and there's kind of the ugly side of the internet, but there is a good side to the internet, right? You have so much direct access to so many resources. And me and Brandon were just talking about this when we were growing up. We were almost on that age where like we all kind of had phones, wasn't maybe good data everywhere, but and we didn't have that full access. And nowadays so many students. I mean, you have direct access to so many successful entrepreneurs, their direct thoughts, their advice, how to do things. And so I think just, reading books, but also finding people that you enjoy and not comparing yourself to them, but also just learning from what they've done and what they've said regarding things. I just think that's so powerful. And it's such, again, like we talk about spending time and those sorts of things. It's like maybe if we can turn 20 minutes on social media to 20 minutes, either reading a book or, you can hop on social media and read, someone's column or some thoughts or something. And I think that, it's really cool what's out there today. There's just so many resources.
One mantra that we kind of live by is information without application is useless. We live in an age where there's too much information, honestly, but you can literally go learn just about anything or about anything online now. The difference, though, is finding the resources. There's two things that have been helpful for me, right? One is a willingness to act, and I don't know if this is just how I've always been, but I'm the crazy person that reads a book and then goes and implements and does all of it. Some of the books shaped, but it's a long-term process. So what looked crazy in the eyes of the world or my friends, or everything that I do is very thought out. So going and getting a corporate sales job, working there for 2 years, there was motives behind that. Why I quit, when I quit, starting a business. So I think I just want to start on that because I could give you all the resources in the world. I could teach you yada, yada, yada. I don't, but unless you do them or implement them, they are completely useless. And so I think one of the most valuable lessons I've learned is to take as much action as possible and then use all that feedback as a learning process. That being said, on a practical note, as far as resources, I would say like 3 really stick out. Books are like modern day superpowers because most people just don't have attention spans and all their time's on a phone. But if you read a book, you're going to, modern day superhero. Experience. So that goes back to taking action, just doing, do more, do. And that is a valuable resource because now you have experience. Nobody can take away your experience and the things that you've done. But the third is just honestly investing in myself, in business coaches and mentors and training programs. If I feel stuck or at a plateau, or I feel like, man, I'm kind of hitting a limit, most people shy back and then they kind of turn off. I try and get uncomfortable and I'm like, well, now's the time I need to invest in myself because I don't have all the answers. So that means, I've spent a lot of different money on training programs, on coaches and mentors, and they've helped me with a lot of these things. They've done it. I want to learn from people who have done what I've done, not just like teach, not just people that are teaching theory, but people who are practitioners. And I'm willing to, I don't expect them to give that to me for free, give up their time to me for free. I'm willing to invest resources into them because I know going at it myself is going to cost more time and more money than actually investing in somebody like a coach, a mentor, a training program that's going to give me a systematic and a proven process to accelerate that. So I would say college can be one of those things, but also there's a lot of great, training programs. If you want to learn a specific skill, you can do that without having to fork out, a fortune or spend 4 years to learn those things. And the also benefit of that is you can learn those things and absorb those things quickly, and then you can go take action. And that's going to be a super valuable teacher and resource for you moving forward. Because, I'm 27. Between 22 and 27, I've done a lot of different things. And that is now a wealth of resources that I can pull from and draw from and relate with people and help people because I took action, because I invested in myself and I knew where I was going.
Definitely. And so I agree that, being uncomfortable is so important because with comfort, there's no growth. So definitely the best way to grow long term is to do little things that make you uncomfortable every single day. Even if just you experience fear just by thinking about them, that's the best way to bring about growth. So my next question is about the thrill of entrepreneurship. So a lot of people believe that it's glorified and that a lot of the obstacles and struggles that go on behind the scenes aren't necessarily reflected to the public. So, what is your take on this roller coaster experience of being an entrepreneur and the uncertainty and the struggles? And how have you felt about how that has been conveyed to people who aren't necessarily entrepreneurs?
Um, Entrepreneurship is a roller coaster, and I think a lot of people. I heard the other week from from someone that Brendan and I know who works with high school entrepreneurs. It's awesome, but he says everybody wants to be an entrepreneur until they are one. And I just think we live in this age where it's just glorified of like, oh, you can like get Ferraris, and sure you can do that, and there's tremendous financial upside to being an entrepreneur. It's still really hard, and it is a roller coaster, and so that's why I think motivation will fade, discipline maintains. And if you have kind of that equilibrium of those three pillars of self, it is important to have those boundaries. You want to hedge against the downside, but you also don't want to get too high. You really want to celebrate and capitalize, but otherwise you'll crash and burn. So I do think having some level of equilibrium emotionally is really important. Um, and learning is a lifelong process. I love what I do now, I guess, as an entrepreneur, because I'm constantly learning. I'm learning new things. I'm getting, and it's not luck, it's cause and effect. The harder you work, the luckier you get. The more people you make, you start thinking a certain way. And now all of a sudden, opportunities just come to you and doors open. Um, so I do think that when I first started my consulting business and I invested into a training program, it was so uncomfortable and I loved it. I was like, oh my gosh, I just came from this like stable job. It almost felt like I'm in this different paradigm. And it took a few months to almost coexist in this world. But now it's like a cheat code. Now it's like I'm comfortable being uncomfortable and just thinking different than the majority of people. But at first it was uncomfortable. And a lot of people are scared to experience that, or when they do for a little bit, they want to go back to being comfortable. So I do think the learning, but also I will say the thrill of entrepreneurship definitely is that definitely gets you through the lows, but also for only so long. And that's where that consistency and daily action comes in. Because if you're in a low spot and you have a bad business month, it's not going to be the excitement from 3 months ago that's going to get you through that. It's going to be a very systematic process of what you've learned on how
Okay.
to get those clients. Um, I love sales. I'm a salesman at heart. I don't whatever business I'm working on, in my businesses, I still get excited. I still get a rush when we sign up a student or when I land a client. Sure, revenue, that's great. Money is awesome. You need it to live. But it's because I know that people are investing in themselves, and now the impact is going to be magnified because now someone invested in himself, we're going to help them, and now they're going to multiply the impact, and that's what gets me excited. So I will never forget. And it's little things too, it's micro wins. When I first started my first business and I just started cold emailing people, when I got a first email reply, even if it was I'm not interested, I was excited. I would call my brother and be like, dude, I just got an email back. you know when I first got like, yeah, I'm interested, new level, like that's a new rush, kind of that hit of adrenaline. When I land my first client, new hit of adrenaline. When you make your first 10K month, new hit of adrenaline, right? All these different things. Still, like with Infinite You, I'll never forget our very first student that was like, yes, I want to work with you guys. And I was so excited. I had to go take a walk. I had to call Brennan, because, and this is, I think, why it goes back to your goals and being aware and having vision, because the most excited and fulfilling thing in entrepreneurship, in my opinion, is when you have a thought and idea, and then that you realize that, and that actually comes to fruition. What was once a dream of a student section consulting business or this, coaching education alternative, when somebody pays you, and that is when it cements it as a reality, that is literally the best feeling, and that is worth any ounce of being uncomfortable. And the last thing I'll say is what helps in that mindset is if you really believe in yourself and what you're doing, and if you really believe in the impact you can have through your business, and this mindset has really shaped Brennan and I. It is actually selfish of you to keep that to yourself. It is selfish of you to keep that locked inside your fear, to keep that locked inside of being uncomfortable or what are people going to think of me, because people need your product, people need your service. And so you like go do it. So again, sorry, that was a bit long. But hopefully that was helpful for that question. And Brendan, feel free to add on.
Yeah, I was gonna say I got a little bit of experience being an intrapreneur. So I was an entrepreneur with training wheels on, I guess, if you will. And that was fun. I mean, there really was. I don't want to say there was no risk. There was a little risk in it, but it wasn't going to fail. And I myself got to learn so much. It was an incredible opportunity getting that for a few years. And then I think Brandon touched on it a little bit, but we've talked about the 3 pillars of self and hedging against those downsides. And so there are going to be tough months, tough days, tough weeks that come with being an entrepreneur. But, I think of those 3 things and how well are you cemented in, your goals and your finances and your mindset, habits, those sorts of things. And then, for us, me and Brandon, full transparency here, like we have a lot of conversations in regards to like being partners and just being on the same page and like how well are you communicating and on, I guess, kind of on par with your goals and those sorts of things. Because like if you're going to have a down month and you can't afford that financially, just kind of understanding that, right? And so hedging to make yourself as successful as possible, maybe when the downtimes happen. And so, for us, we celebrate a lot of wins and it's super awesome, like Brandon has said. And then, we kind of hedge against those downtimes, and that's just being an entrepreneur, right? So we spend a good amount of time. We enjoy the thrill, but we continue to spend a good amount of time on like revisiting our goals, and our habits and our finances. And then, for us personally, working in a partnership, like spending some time on that too, because that's obviously important. And so I think a lot of people think like entrepreneur, like, let's just go. And yes, we want action. We want to go, but it is pretty important to take just a quick step back and like get all those things on the same page and kind of organize yourself. So, I think that's kind of a little bit of a roundabout answer, but enjoy the wins for sure. We'll even have days where it's like, we'll have just a great day and it's like, dude, let's go like celebrate. Like I'm going to go, take a walk and, Brandon's going to go to dinner with his wife. It's just cool. And so, make sure you also celebrate those wins on your entrepreneurial journey for the kids coming up for sure.
I think it's especially exciting for small businesses because it's like the realization that your idea is something that you came up with in your head has actually become a project, and that it's come to fruition, and it has the potential to impact other people. So like when you heard back from your first student and at Infinite you felt that adrenaline, you felt that realization that this is real and this has the potential to make a change in the lives of others. So that's definitely a very exciting part of being a part of a small business and seeing it grow. But I also think it's very important to have a long-term plan. Going with the flow is a given, and it's, again, short-term flexibility. But at the end of the day, you have to have a larger goal, a larger direction that you're working towards in order to be successful. Okay, this is my last question for the day. If you could go back in time and give your high school self some advice, what would it be?
I can go, and if you want to wrap us up, I think I'll go.
Go for it.
Yeah, mine, it's going to sound kind of vague and ambiguous, but my real advice to myself would be to consider all options. And within that just comes again, like my mindset and just not being so set on just like this thing. And am I doing this? Why am I doing this? So just consider all options. At that point, I didn't know that I had a heart for entrepreneurship. I think I had a heart for maybe some of the things or concepts of entrepreneurship, but I wasn't actually informed of it at that time. So I would say, I guess at that time, I maybe wish I would have researched and looked up all options to what I thought success would be. And so for me, I don't know if I would maybe regret going to school just because of kind of the way my life panned out. But there's certainly some things that regarding traditional education, I at least wish I was more informed of or knew more about. And that comes with just the price, what's going to be taught, you're selling your whole life. Your summers are going to be then spent making money so that you can live and not be eating ramen every day. And so just be aware of all your options and ways to success. And within that, there's some smaller stuff like comparison, those sorts of things that, again, I just wish wasn't a thing. I think of one of my my classes in my senior year, they had like a big poster board, and they were like celebrating when people would go to these schools. And there was just like all this pressure. And it was almost like, it's like the kid who might have been going to community college to save money, like they weren't on the board. And you think back on that now, and that's just like, geez. And so being willing to, I guess, go against the grain and not feel that social pressure that comes with having to go to college. And again, if college is a great route for you, for sure. But I think I wish I would have known about all the different options and opportunities out there.
That's really good, Brennan. Yeah, do as much as you can. Set like mini milestones. So gain as much experience, do as much as you can from 18 to 22. Set up a goal. Where do I want to be at 22? And then do the same thing from 22 to 25. It's a great season of life to just explore, try new things, land new jobs. Then try and focus on 25 to 30. Where do I want to be? And just break it up into chunks. I would say that's one thing. Another thing is be willing to make mistakes and be willing to be flexible and to adapt. You might think that the next season or the next decision is the right one, and it might be for the time being, but give yourself the freedom 3 months down the line to adjust. Be like, I'm not sure this is right. Because here's the thing, you're not tied to anything. You're never tied to a school. You're never tied to a job. You're never tied to a business. You can adapt. Read books, get off social media. I think, what I would want for my high school self to know, one is find people that you love who they are, and what they do and their quality of life. And that's not just like what they do for a job or like how much money they make, but like, what are their relationships like? What is their family life like? Whatever you value, find people that you admire and either study them, invest in them, or build a relationship with them, and just surround yourself with those types of people.
I think if you can elaborate on that, you're not even talking, I think most people would say like influencers or like CEOs, but you're talking, I think too, I know you've talking about just how important your aunt's been in your journey. These like everyday people, like
everyday, totally.
You've always spoken like highly of your aunt. She works hard and relationships. And so it doesn't have to be, pick your influencer or whatever, right? You're talking about like everyday. I wanted to make sure that was clarified because you're so passionate about that. And I think that's just such a good point for sure.
It's really good. And ultimately there's an infinite marketplace out there. There's infinite opportunities. The only way you're going to fail is if you quit. So do the hard work of self-awareness, set goals, be confident in your decisions, say no to shiny object syndrome. And, I'm going to end on like a lot of people don't go here, especially like in the entrepreneurship realm, but I'm going to go there is probably the single most important thing is because everything literally comes from this is like when it comes to mental and emotional health is be willing to take care of yourself, be vulnerable, like do what you need, do the hard work you need to heal, to figure out who you are, whatever that looks like. That might be books, that might be personality tests, that might be going to counseling. Everything, the more self-aware and the higher your self-esteem and the self-image, just the more confident you're going to be in your decision. So again, I know this is entrepreneurship and business, but like seriously, that needs to be talked about. There's a lot of hard things in life. There's a lot of stuff going out there. And so there's a lot of toxic people. There's a lot of toxic things online. So remove those toxic people from your life limit your social media intake if it's causing you anxiety and you're comparing, and go take care of yourself. Like, go do the hard work you need for mental and emotional health, because when you do that, your confidence is going to go up, you're going to become more clear in your goals, and you're going to be more willing to take action. And that, going back to, the beginning, that's what I wish I knew, that I had the freedom to do out of high school, that it was okay, that it was cool, that it wasn't weak, that it wasn't like looked down upon, to like take care of those things. So
That was a lot of great advice. I'm writing it down for myself right now, and I'm sure the majority of our BISBA community is able to benefit from it as well. It's just wonderful that you can talk about something that you would have changed, or something that you would tell yourself, your younger self. But current high school students can benefit from that and can learn from what you would have changed, or what advice you would have given. So I think that's beautiful, just that handoff of wisdom and knowledge. But I think that concludes our call for the day. Brandon and Brennan, I really want to thank you so much for joining me here today. Your insight was amazing. Thank you so much for inspiring all the students watching this. And it was an honor to speak with you today.
you're welcome. Thank you so much for having us. Really a privilege and an honor. Appreciate it.